Hello everyone and welcome for a new video. In this episode we are going to talk about 5 awesome pigments that you might want to try if you're a painter. Let's do this. Before we start, let's just do a quick update on how everything is going, especially with my new course on color, which is in progress right now, but it's going really well. And thank you for all the suggestions and the feedback. A couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, I asked you what you'd be interested in, what type of approach you would like, and I received many responses which were really interesting, and that allowed me to sort of articulate the content in a more, a more pleasing way. Especially I updated the quality, the sound, the light, everything, the editing, everything is really updated compared to my previous course. I'm really proud of the quality that I'm getting, and the content is really a level above. It's really clearly one step higher in terms of complexity, but also how interesting it is. I mean, color, it started off as mostly color theory, but then it became mostly on color, and then it became like painting, because color and painting, they just go together. And it's hard to talk about painting without talking about color. It's hard to talk about color without talking about painting. Yeah, everything is going really well with the course, and I'm sure you'll like it. Alright, so let's review 5 awesome pigments that, well, as a painter, you might want to give them a try because they're really cool. So they're not like the most useful pigments, or they're not like essential or fundamental pigments. They're mostly pigments that, not that many people might use, so sort of they have some sort of originality to them. It's not like, cadmium red, ultramarine blue. These are very well-known pigments, and they are part of many typical go-to palettes. But I want to review some pigments that can bring a little touch of originality, and can open up a field for your creativity, maybe colors that you never really thought about using, and that can bring something extra artistic, extra creative. So let's review these pigments. So the first pigments I wanted to talk about is Quinacridone, and especially Quinacridone Magenta or Quinacridone Rose. I often use the two. I never know exactly which one to choose between the two. They are similar. Quinacridone Magenta draws more towards violet, and Quinacridone Rose draws more towards red. One is more like, your magenta, your actual magenta pigment, and the other is more some type of red that has a strong magenta tendency. The Quinacridone Rose is more some type of red. It's pretty much comparable to alizarin crimson in a way. It's just more bright, more clear, but it's very comparable to alizarin crimson. It's more some type of red. And magenta, Quinacridone Magenta, is more like really magenta. It feels more like violet red. Sometimes they're called permanent rose, permanent magenta. They're really cool because this is a range of colors that are not really used that much, but they can bring something, very unusual to most paintings, especially magenta. It counteracts with green. It's awesome. You can play with green, magenta. They're complementary, and you can really create some awesome feelings. You can use them for skin tones. They're also really great. You can, let's say, forget about your alizarin crimson and replace that with Quinacridone Rose or Quinacridone Magenta. They're really going to work really well. And they can be used also as a substitute for red. You can go for for a pigment like quinacridone rose or magenta. And instead of using, you know, a bright red like cadmium red, you can recreate that by using one of these pigments and mixing it with some type of bright yellow, and you will get a very bright, very strong vermilion type of red, which is pretty cool. Second pigment, this one, if you know me, you know it's my favorite. This is Cobalt Teal Blue. It's sometimes called Cobalt Turquise Light. It has like several versions. It can be very greenish, it can be very bluish. There's a whole lot of different variations. Like all pigments, all the things that I suggest in this video can be completely different from one manufacturer to the other. They all have different composition, different ideas of how pigments should look and what color exactly they should have. But I'm really in love with this Cobalt Turquise. Let's call it turquoise, it's going to be easier this way. It's just an awesome light cyan pigment. You can use it as a cyan. It's not blue. It's not blue. If you want, you can call it turquoise, but it's not blue. It's really important to make a difference between blue and cyan. It's just like thinking that red and orange are the same. It's like calling this light red. No, you don't call this a light red, and you don't call this a light blue, because it's not. It's cyan. It's a color in between. It's not the same. It's not the same. We just have to stop calling things blue when they are not blue. I mean, doing my color theory course, I discovered a whole lot of things with words. I mean, our vocabulary is really messed up when it comes to colors. And well, let's not talk about this in this course, but maybe I'll do another episode on this subject. It's a mess. So what can you use this for? Well, if you're like me, you want to use this color for anything. I mean, ultramarine blue is only going to get you colors that are very dark and very intense. And this color can bring mixtures that have a light feeling. Like you can create, if you're using this cyan to create a green with yellow, it's going to be a much more powerful, a bright green, a very strong electric green. If you're using ultramarine blue with yellow, it's going to create a very dull green. You can also use that as a sort of skin tones killing pigment. Like if your skin tones are too intense, too red, you can use this color and bang, you just kill the color. That's what I call killing the hue, because this is complementary to red. Like think cadmium red is the opposite of this color, so if you use this color against cadmium red, you're going to neutralize it. A third pigment is chromium yellow. This color is sometimes called Napels yellow substitute, or like Napels yellow hue. Sometimes it's called yellow ochre light. It has lots of names. It's just a dark, weak yellow, which is really interesting as a sort of mixing base for skin tones. I really like this color. It's very weak. It doesn't bring a lot of chroma. It's not very intense. But that's exactly what you want for skin tones. Using this type of color, you can like avoid using white for your skin tones, or you can use a lot less white for your skin tones, and instead you can use this yellow, which is a very weak but like strong yellow with a heavy body. It's going to bring something very unique for your skin tones, something very solid that can really recreate this, carnal colors. And I really enjoy using this pigment. It's a really great addition that you might want to try, especially if you're interested in portraits, figures. This is a great great pigment, and as I said, it's often used as a substitute for Napels yellow, which is toxic. Now our fourth pigment is Pyrrole Red. This is a red that you can use as an alternative to cadmium red. Like, let's say you're not feeling comfortable using cadmium red, or you find that it's too expensive. Well, you can use Pyrrole Red. It's the Ferari-red is Pyrrole Red. That's the pigments that they used on Ferraris, and yeah, it's a really great opaque red that sort of, yeah, it works like a cadmium red, so it's an interesting alternative that you can use. And finally, another pigment you might want to use, but maybe you already do, is phthalo green. Phthalo or phthalo green or phthalo blue or any of the phthalo family. You might want to look at these colors because they have the greatest tinting strength ever. Like, there is no pigment that's like more powerful than any of the phthalos. They're all really, really strong, and they are over-dominating in most situations. So you have to learn how to tame them. You have to learn how to use just a touch of them in a mixture. You don't need a lot of them. Just a tiny amount is enough to make all the colors explode, really. It's something like you might want to use, I don't know, for water when you have effects of transparency. It's beautifully transparent. It's a very strong color, so you have to be very careful when using it, but it can bring a lot of variety. Just use it in small touches. You can almost glaze with it and create something very deep, very profound. And yeah, it's an awesome color. You have to learn how to master it, because it's not like your usual green. Like, let's say you don't use that for foliage, for instance, because it's just too green. It's too green. It's going to make if you paint leaves with this type of green, it's going to make everything look very weird, very artificial, because it's just so strong that, well, you have to tone it down. And you can tone it down if you want using magenta, because it's going to really neutralize this type of green. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you try these pigments, how they work for you. As always, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video. Until then, have fun painting. Bye.